Week 2 of our Satan Speaks series. So last week we talked about the first time in the Bible that Satan had a speaking part. And that was, of course, speaking to Eve in the form of the serpent. And he convinced her to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. He used 4 tactics to successfully tempt her and get her to commit the first sin in human history. We talked about those 4 tactics. Let's jog our memories. What did he do to make it, to successfully tempt Eve? Number 1 was disguised. He disguised himself as something beautiful on the outside, even though his words and what he had on the inside was evil. What was number 2? Doubt. He introduced doubt. What was that 4-line question he said to Eve? Did God really say? That was his question, to introduce doubt. What was number 3? Distortion. He distorted the truth. He twisted God's words. Even though Eve really had everything in the garden, he made her feel like she had nothing. And then finally, what was the last D we talked about? Desire. Satan encouraged and tempted her to follow her own desires as opposed to following God's commands. And so those are the tactics that Satan used with Eve. Of course, we see those tactics still in play today as it's just part of how Satan operates. And then we talked about the things that we can use to overcome those 2 tactics. Number 1 was knowing God's word, because if we know God's word, we study it, we commit it to heart, we commit it to memory, it's a lot harder for Satan to disguise himself and twist the truth because we actually know the truth. So that's really the best defense and offense combined. And then number 2, the Bible warns us over and over to guard our hearts, to guard our desires, because we do have a sinful nature inside of us. It is just a part of being a human on this earth. And so there are things inside of us that are against God's will, against God's commands. And we have to guard those hearts because they can manipulate us and lead us down the wrong path. So that was last week. Today, we're going to talk about a guy named Job, because this is the second time that Satan shows up in the Bible with an actual speaking part. But he doesn't talk to Job. He never says any words at all to Job. Satan speaks directly to God and talks about Job. So this is a bit of an interesting change of scenery, if you will, from last week where it was Satan speaking actually to Eve. Now it's Satan speaking directly to God. So I want to set the scene, context before content all the time. Someone read from the book of Job, chapter 1, verses 1 through 5. Let's just, again, set the scene here.
There was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job.
Uz.
And that man was blameless and upright, one who feared God and turned away from evil. There were born to him 7 sons and 3 daughters. He possessed 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 female donkeys, and very many servants, so that this man was the greatest of all the people of the east. His sons used to go and hold a feast in the house of each one on his day, and they would send and invite their 3 sisters to eat and drink with them. And when the days of the feast had run their course, Job would send and consecrate them, and he would rise early in the morning and offer burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job said, "It may be that my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts." Thus Job did continue.
Thank you. So based on these first 5 verses, what do we know about Job? What stands out?
Blameless and upright.
Okay, so I would say he's a godly man. Yeah, the Bible says here he's blameless, he's upright, he fears God, he shuns evil. Say what? Okay, he's a wealthy man. So he's a godly man, he's a wealthy man. This is the era where wealth is measured in sheep, and he's got them. He's got all the sheep. So he's a very, very wealthy man. It says he was the greatest of all the people of the East. Like, we're talking a known stature, a known wealth here. And then what else? One more thing we take away. He's a family man. He's got 7 sons and 3 daughters, and they got a little bit of a party lifestyle, it sounds like. They like to throw the birthday parties. And when they do, Job's like, I don't know what's going on down there, but I want to make sure that as a godly man, I want to make sure that I'm taking care of my family and doing the right thing. So we see how much he loved his children by the sacrifices he would make in order to cleanse them, so to say, of maybe what seems to be a not as godly lifestyle as what Job had. We don't know for certain. The book of Job never tells us for sure, but we can put Job, in terms of just human history, somewhere around the patriarchal period. So think of like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Because if you look at some of the context clues, Job lived to be about 240 or so years old. That's about the same lifespan that people had in that era. Again, his wealth is measured in livestock, which is how wealth was measured in that era as well. So there's like context clues like that just kind of give us a sense of when Job lived. The other important thing the reason I'm bringing that up is because all through the book of Job, 40-some chapters of the book of Job, you never hear any mention of the law, the Mosaic law. So it would have more than likely, again, context clues, been before that law was ever given, which again kind of puts us in that patriarchal period. So just again, setting the scene, getting the context of when all this is going down. Those are the first 5 verses and what we know about Job. But there's another scene of this story that's happening somewhere else. So let's read that now, verses 6 and 7. Just 6 and 7, please. So now we find ourselves in the presence of God. I'm going to assume that this is a heavenly meeting. Seems to make sense, but we don't have an exact thing that says the angels came before the throne of the Lord. Like, we don't know exactly where, but we're in some kind of a scene. We're in the presence of God. We've got angels and Satan side by side going to God. It seems to like give an account, like what you been up to, kind of a conversation, like a little bit of a report almost. If this strikes you as odd, we have to remember that Satan was an angel. He was a bad angel. And we read about in Revelation 12, where we don't have the complete history and we don't have to have all the details, but in Revelation 12, 7 through 9, we know that Satan led a rebellion against God, a heavenly rebellion. And he actually got kicked out of heaven, along with, Revelation says, a third of the angels who were in heaven got kicked out with them because they had joined forces with Satan. So we know at some point there's this heavenly battle. Satan loses. He gets hurled to the earth. God's like, you're out. That's it. I can't have you in the presence of heaven anymore. So it would not have been an abnormal thing for Satan to go approach God, because Satan was an angel, and it would have been maybe a normal conversation. But it's just interesting the way that it's written here, that the angels came, and Satan was with them this time. So it's a whole other scene of this story. But let's now read the conversation. Read 7 again, but then read 7 through 9. Yes, please.
So Satan answered the Lord and said, "Did Job fear God for nothing? Have you not made a hedge around him, around his household, around all that he has on every side?"
You're good there. Just through 9, sorry. It's so good. You can't stop, right? So here's the conversation, the start of the conversation. God says to Satan, "Where'd you come from?" I don't think God is asking that in ignorance. Like, does God know where Satan has been? And yes.
He's not asking in ignorance.
It is. I would believe it to be, yes.
He had to come back.
Yep. Yep. I read this a bit more of God saying, like, what you been up to. Like there's a tone there that I'm implying. I'm kind of, reading into it a little bit, if you will, but there's just a tone there of what have you been doing? Yeah. Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's like a little kid has like marker all over his hands and face, and it's all over the wall, and it's like, Johnny, how did this happen? I don't know. That's like one of those kind of moments. He was a what? He was a very high positioned angel, yes. Yeah. The rebellion, that whole story of rebellion is, I talk about my list of questions for God. Like, that's one that I'm interested in now. When I get to heaven, I probably won't care. You know what I mean? All right, so Satan's response is a very famous response from going to and fro on the earth and walking back and forth on it. Does that remind you of any scriptures in the New Testament? Say again? Yeah, 1 Peter 5:8, Peter talks about Satan. He says, be sober and be vigilant because your adversary, I want to hang on to that word for a little bit today. Peter says, your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. So I love the parallel that we see here in the Old Testament of Satan actually saying, I'm just walking around the earth, going back and forth. Right? He doesn't talk about the roaring lion part. He's like, I'm just walking around. And then Peter gives us that context of like, no, he's looking. He is looking to pounce. Scoping. Yeah, there you go. So then in verse 8, oh, sorry, was someone going to say something? I thought I heard something, sorry. In verse 8, this is striking. What does God say to Satan in verse 8? Have you considered my servant Job? Like, okay, there's a couple of thoughts, like all the thoughts in my mind of like, man, God, you just threw Job under the bus. Like, you are like setting him up. But then there's the other side of the coin of, man, I want God to have that confidence in me. Have you considered my servant Caleb? Like, he's faithful. He's a just man. Wow. When I think about it in that context, it's like, holy cow. That's pretty impressive. That God has, of course, God knows what's going to happen through the whole story. He's omniscient. But still, just to have that confidence in who Job is and his faith and his service to God, it's wow. Because God will give it to you. Oh, man.
I looked at it as, it's almost like a sucker bet. God's won. What about Job? He's going to stand up and be faithful.
Yeah.
It's almost like, oh, here you go, God. What do you think about this guy? Here you go.
Yeah. So you're saying God's hustling Satan here? A sucker bet. I like that. Oh, okay. Tell me more.
Because Satan's been going back and forth across the earth, so he's been encountering people.
Okay.
So, kind of my thought is that God already knows who Job is, and he knows that Job is kind of fighting Satan because he sacrifices for his children. So his kids, and most likely Job has already encountered the devil. And Job has always done things
Right.
seek forgiveness, or,
Yeah.
but now God's going, kind of like, hey, consider him, have you encountered him? What do you think of this?
Interesting. I'm going down this rabbit hole with you, Faye, and I'm like, is there something going on? Again, this is reading into all the things, but it's like, Satan, you've been going after the weaker ones. Have you thought about going after the strong one?
Yeah, or, you've encountered him, but you don't know.
Yeah, you just passed by.
Low-hanging fruit.
Yeah. Ooh, interesting. I love that perspective. That's a really fun way to think about it.
Yeah, and the low-hanging fruit, like you said, is kids.
Yeah. Couldn't get to Job. So the other thing that came to mind when I was going through this is, again, this whole idea of God like putting Job out there and saying like, Satan, check this guy out. And the word confidence, again, was the word that just kind of kept going through my mind, this confidence that God has in Job.
God knows the heart of Job. He doesn't say, did you consider Job? He said, you considered my servant.
Right. And so that he knows his heart. And my brain, again, going down that trail, led me to 1 Corinthians 10:13, when Paul's writing and he says, no temptation has overtaken you except that is common to man. God is faithful, and he will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able. So it was just another amazing proof point in how well God knows his children. He knows exactly who we are. He knows our strengths. He knows our weaknesses. He knows what we need on the daily. And I just loved like putting that whole picture together. And again, going in my mind, like, man, I want God to have that confidence, again, from my word here, in me to say like, have you considered my servant Caleb? I know this guy. I know what he's capable of. Yeah, proud dad moment. Oh, that's so great. That's exactly what this is a really cool proud dad moment. Look in verse 8, because God describes Job to Satan using three phrases here. He says, have you considered my servant Job? What's the first thing he says? Blameless, or some versions would say there is none like him on the earth. Whew, Job's in like unique company here. He's a bit of a standout. It's a strong statement that really emphasizes, like, Job has some pretty unique qualities here, some unparalleled righteousness in terms of, humans walking the earth, at least at this point in time. What's the second phrase God uses? Say again? Honesty? Upright. This is where my New King James says blameless. It says he's a blameless and an upright man. So he's got integrity. He's got like the right morals, the right conduct, free from blame, does what's right. That's what we're reading here. And then what's that third phrase?
Fears God and turns away from evil.
Yeah, fears God and shuns evil. Those three phrases, or this last one here, really highlights Job's reverence for God. I like taking what we read in the first 5 verses about Job, and we talked about him being a godly man, a wealthy man, and a family man. And then this here expanding on that, Job is a godly man. But these are the words of God himself saying these things about Job. Again, it's just an incredible conversation. What kind of a man must have Job really been for God to say these things about him? I think it's just really, really incredible. So how does Satan respond? God just kind of gives this review of Job to Satan. And now let's see what Satan's response is. Read verses 9 through 11. Whew. Okay, so here's the question, right? Last week the question was, did God really say? What's the question this week? Does Job fear God for nothing? That's the question. Tim. Yeah. Yep. What's so you're right where I was going to go, Tim. Like, why this question? Like before we go any further, what's Satan's intent here? Like, what's he trying to get at? There's some. Yeah, he's got a motive. What is the motive? Oh, he wants to know Job's motive. Okay. Okay.
He fears you because you blessed him.
Okay. A little bit of like a blame game.
Or he doesn't fear, or he fears, he really doesn't have a reason to doubt him because he's never had adversity.
Ah. Yeah. Why would Job doubt you, God? You've babied him.
He's so showered in blessing, he's got no reason to doubt, fear,
He's
anything.
under your protection.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, he's got the silver spoon, God. Why would he not? Why would he not worship you? Look back at verse 6 for a second. There came a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan. Does anyone have a footnote next to the word Satan there? Or like any kind of a Bible note? Like, what does it say?
Satan means accuser.
Or adversary in Hebrew.
Yeah. There it is. That's what we're going to talk about today. The footnote in the New King James says, literally, it says the word literally. I'm not adding that. It says literally the adversary. And then it says, and so throughout this book. So we talked about a minute ago in 1 Peter 5:8 when Peter said, your adversary, the devil.
Oh, yours says throughout this book?
Mm-hmm.
Mine says throughout chapters 1 and 2.
Well, that's a little more accurate because that Satan only shows up in the first 2 chapters of Job. He doesn't show up in the other part. So it's a little bit of not a stretch of the truth. It's a little bit of a balloon to say throughout the book. But yeah, he's the adversary. That's his title. That's really what the name Satan actually means. It means the adversary. He's our opponent. He's the enemy. Peter says, again, he's the adversary, the devil, walking around like a roaring lion, seeking who he may devour. The tactic that he's using here, Stacy, is the other version of the footnote that your Bible just read, is he's accusing. That's the tactic he's using here with Job. He used a couple of different tactics with Eve. He showed up to Eve as the great tempter. In this story, we see Satan showing up as the great accuser. Now, this is a different role. It's pretty interesting here. Satan is accusing Job of a crime he didn't commit. His claims, like we just talked about, were that Job's love and devotion were very conditional. They were only there. Job only believed. Job only served. Job only loved God because of the silver spoon that Satan accused God of giving to Job. And Satan's claim is, God, if you take that silver spoon away, Job's going to curse you to your face. He's not in it for you, God. He's only in it for the blessings that you're giving him. You see that accusation there? And I mean, he's accusing God. Job's kind of like the innocent bystander here, but it's kind of like Job is there, Satan is there on behalf of Job, like, you've messed this up. That's a strong accusation. We read last week, again in Revelation 12:10, where it calls Satan the ancient serpent. And that was very fitting last week because we were talking about Satan in the Garden of Eden, where he appeared as a serpent. That was 12, I think 12:9, not 12:10. In 12:10, Revelation 12:10, it says, I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, salvation and strength and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ have come, for the accuser of our brethren, who accused them before our God day and night, has been cast down. And this just, put this in your column of all the things that prove the Bible's perfection, where we've got Satan appearing as a serpent to Eve, and in Revelation, one of his titles is the ancient serpent. We've got Satan now appearing to God, accusing God and accusing Job, and now we see another title in Revelation for Satan as the great accuser of the brethren. I mean, it's perfect. It's so perfect. How do people doubt the book? Is the question that comes to mind for me. So anyway, our number one adversary, Satan, relentlessly accusing Christians before God, because Satan doesn't just hate God. Satan hates God's children. Satan hates God's forgiveness of his children as well. So he stands there as an accuser. God, he only loves you because you bless him. Or God, she only worships you because times are good right now. God, they only serve you because you've made them successful. It's that voice, that accuser that Satan constantly has. Now, is Satan good at accusing us directly as well? Y'all ever hear those little voices in your mind? Man, there's no way God could love me. I'm just such a screw up. There's no way God could forgive that sin. You ever hear those voices? You ever hear those pulling at your heartstrings? You think there's a great accuser whispering in your ear there going, God can't forgive that. This is one of Satan's jobs. It's one of his roles. That's how he shows up. Again, to Eve, the great tempter, and now in Job's story, the great accuser. But this is where God steps in. Satan says to God, take it all away, and Job is going to curse you. And God says, all right, I'll accept your sucker bet. I like the way you said that, Mike. I'll accept this. Satan, he's yours. Take everything he has. Don't touch him, is what God said. We read that in verse 12. The Lord said to Satan, behold, all that he has, all that Job has is in your power, Satan. Only do not lay a hand on him. Don't touch him. Satan leaves the presence of God after this. All right? I'm going to summarize because just for the sake of time, Job 13 through the end of the first chapter, God gives Satan this permission to attack Job, his family, his possessions, but he can't touch Job. Satan takes it all away. In a single day, Job loses all of his possessions and his 10 children. In one fell swoop, everything is absolutely gone. And at the very end of chapter 1, Job says, naked I came from my mother's womb, naked I shall return there. The Lord gave, the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. And in verse 22, in all of this, Job did not sin, nor charge God with wrong. All right. Job just proved all of that stuff that we just read in the first 5 verses of Job about Job being a godly man, and then those 3 descriptors that God told Satan about Job, about he's upright and blameless and there's no one like him. Job just proved all that right. Satan lost the first round of this battle. And so let's see what happens next. We read, someone read Job 2 now, the first 3 verses. Conversation sound familiar? Round 2. Satan's like, I want some more. I'm not done here. So has the exact same conversation. God once again says, hey, how'd it go with Job? there's just something else in here that I want to put into the tone of how'd that go that first time? You want to try again? There's something here. Have you considered my servant Job? There's no one like him. I told you that once already, Satan. You want to try again? How'd that work out for you? Yeah, how'd that go down? So, same conversation. Let's see how Satan responds. Read now for us 4 through 10. Sorry.
Then Satan answered the Lord and said, "Skin for skin, all that a man has he will give for his life. But stretch out your hand and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will curse you to your face." And the Lord said to Satan, "Behold, he is in your hand. Only spare his life." So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord and struck Job with loathsome sores from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head. And he took a piece of broken pottery with which to scrape himself while he sat in the ashes. Then his wife said to him, "Do you still hold fast to your integrity? Curse God and die." But he said to her, "You speak as one of the foolish women who speak. Shall we receive good from God, and shall we not receive evil?" And all this Job did not sin with his lips.
All right, so God says, all right, Satan, round 2, he's yours. Don't kill him. Do whatever you want. Don't kill him. So Satan goes, attacks his health. He breaks out in these boils. This is just so graphic. Like, I just can't even imagine this idea of like the suffering that Job is going through. These boils, and he's scraping them with broken pottery, sitting in ash. Like, this is awful. This is an absolute travesty. I mean, he's already lost his children and all of his possessions, and now his own health is at a high risk here. And it's just the pain and the suffering. I wasn't going to go down that part of the story all that much, because it's like as if all the other things weren't bad enough. Like his wife is like not even there to encourage him and to.
Well, and it's one family that Satan spared the first go round, if you notice. So he got rid of all the kids, but he didn't touch the wife. So
There's something there. I'm not going to go. My wife is not in the room, so I can make this. They say what? Yeah. Yeah. And this is like, it's again one of those things you look at it and you're thinking, or I think, like, I want so much more context. Like, was that another part of Satan's work? Was Satan then using her, tempting her to go to Job to just twist that knife even more, you know? Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, they were her kids and her sheep just as much. Her character is never mentioned anywhere in the story except for right there, and we're like, oh, well, she didn't pass the test. Yeah. I wondered that. I did. I was like, man, is there something else here? I didn't have enough context or confidence to like go into it, but yeah, like that's just, there's other questions here that I have, for sure.
Well, it's Satan bringing people to victory. And he's not getting it, and you see that over and
Yep.
over.
I think it's here's where I landed at least. It's a valid proof point for Satan's relentlessness. Right? That's how I'm kind of shaking it out.
Well, he had his victory in Eve,
Mm-hmm.
and they're cast out. So now he's trying to have victory in your heart.
Oh, he got a taste, and he wants some more. Oh, yeah, interesting. Oh, yeah, that's a really interesting way to think about it. Okay, where do we go here? So we got the boils, wife turns on him, Job remains faithful. So through this second round of the knockout fight now, once again, Job is proving the accuser wrong. Now, the rest of the book of Job, like this is the ending of the Satan conversation. First 2 chapters, that's all it is. The rest of the book of Job is when his three friends show up, and there's all these conversations about who did wrong and who done it and who didn't do what. And then God steps in and starts talking to Job and like lays the hammer down. It's some of the most amazing conversation when God talks to Job. Where were you, Job, when I laid the foundation of the earth? Where were you when I said, here is where the great waters will stop and come no far? Like, I mean, man, like God's power and sovereignty on display in this conversation later on, like in the later 30s chapters of Job. It's really incredible. But I want to stay focused on these first two chapters of these conversations with Satan. So like, where do we go from here? What do we take this? What do we do with this conversation? How do we take the story of Job and the conversation of Satan and God? Like, now what? What do we do with this? I pulled out some headlines and some takeaways, and I want to hear what you guys think as well. I think the first thing that hits me about this story is this is a reminder that Satan has incredible power. And we cannot forget this. He has the ability, at least in this story, he had the ability to influence the physical world. He caused weather issues because when his children died and the livestock and all that, it was talking about lightning strikes. It was talking about great winds that blew down the house. So he can influence the physical world. There were these like nomadic tribes who came and attacked the servants and stole all the livestock. So he can influence other people on the world. Like, he has power. And we can't deny that. We can't doubt that. We can't forget that. He is a powerful, powerful being. He embodied a snake in the Garden of Eden. Here he uses weather, other people, even physical attacks on Job's health to try to achieve his result. Satan has some level of power that we should not ignore. That's a headline for me, something that we just got to keep in our minds. We're going to get there, Chip. It is. It is. We often ask the question, or you hear the question asked, why do bad things happen to good people? Did y'all ever realize that bad things happen to bad people too? It's such a one-sided question. Ever since Satan appeared in the garden, tempted Eve, and Eve created that first sin, that was the beginning of the downward spiral. And ever since that moment, bad things have happened to everybody because sin has now entered the world. God created perfection. Satan messed it all up. And because of that, we're on the downward spiral of bad things happening. Bad health, bad circumstances, bad weather, bad whatever. I mean, you look all around the world, the news is not full of great stories of like young Boy Scouts helping older ladies across the street. Those aren't the headlines that make the evening news these days. We only get the bad stuff. It's because Satan is in the world and sin is in the world and has ruined the beautiful thing that God has made. That's what it is. Satan has incredible power. Number two, Chip, even though Satan has this power, God is sovereign. And it is so comforting and so reassuring to me when I read this story and you understand and realize that Satan can only operate inside the bounds that God has set for him. That is awesome. That's like, whoa, what a realization and what a truth. Yeah. In chapter 1, verse 12, God says to Satan, behold, all that he has, all that Job has is in your power, but don't touch him. And then in chapter 2, verse 6, Job is in your hands, Satan, don't kill him. Satan's power has limits. Those limits are set by God because God is sovereign. Satan is not sovereign. And I love that headline. Satan does not have free reign. In all of this evil that he puts into the world, he is still under the authority of God Almighty. And we can't forget that either. Nothing has happened, nothing can happen, nothing will ever happen that is outside of God's control. So even when we are in the midst of a situation like Job where we've lost everything and we are about to die ourselves because of a health crisis, like you're on your last rope, God is still in control over all of that. And there's, again, just a peace, a comfort that we should be able to draw from that. Third headline that I see in the story. Yes, the righteous do suffer sometimes. We all, right, bad things happen to good and evil people the same. But God is still just in all that happens and in all that he does. This one I think is maybe a little harder to like wrap our minds around, because again, you're looking at this going like, man, why did God let this happen to Job? Like that, it's still a pretty brutal path that Job had to walk down because of what Satan did, because of what God allowed. Like Job is what we would call an innocent man, and all these things happened to him. If you fast forward and you get all the way to the very end of the book of Job, we find out that at the end, God actually doubles Job's original wealth. And then Job and his wife have another 7 sons and another 3 daughters. So God restores Job and even blesses him more as a reward, if you will, for the trial that he went through. But there's still, again, just, this is the human in me talking that's thinking like, man, but there's like lifelong impact to Job's life because of what he went through. And so I wrestled with that a little bit this week, and I kind of landed on the idea of like these spiritual battlegrounds that we find ourselves in. Yes, this was a physical attack, but the root of what's happening here is this is a spiritual battleground. This was not an attack over just Job's possessions and his health and his life. This was an attack over Job's, the word is not coming to my mind, persistence and his dedication to God. This is a spiritual battle that Satan is really raging here. And those spiritual battlegrounds are a place where the authenticity of our faith is really tested. Job passed. Job passed with flying colors. And that's inspiration for us, for then when we are going through trials. Can we learn from Job? Yes, God allows testing. He never abandons us. He never leaves us. He's made us that promise. I'll never leave you. I'll never forsake you. He's also promised he'll never give us more than we can handle. So we might get to the end of the rope, but we're still on the rope because God is sovereign, because God is in control, because God is just. The Lord gives, the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. God is sufficient in every situation. I think Job's story here really teaches us to anchor our faith in the character of God as opposed to just our circumstances.
He also blesses Job with longevity. I mean, he's been at the pinnacle of success. He's been knocked down to the bottom, and then in the end, he stays faithful, so God rewards him and says, you know what? You could have been arrogant, but you weren't.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to reward you for that.
Yeah. It's so true. I mean, if y'all want some fun afternoon reading, go read the last few chapters of Job where God starts talking to him, and he's kind of like, hold the mic here for a minute.
Right. And it's also counter to stinking thinking. You got that to do this.
Counter to stinking thinking. Hashtag Faye.
Bro, that's Satan talking to us is our stinking thinking.
Stinking thinking. I had one more headline that I pulled out as well. Satan, the great adversary, the great accuser. but he ain't got nothing on the great advocate. Right? Somebody read 1 John 2:1. 1 John chapter 2, verse 1. Woo! An advocate. The advocate crushes the head of the accuser. Man, I just love that. I love the ending, like it's the greatest story ever told, and we know the ending, and the ending is amazing. I just cannot wait for the day when Jesus Christ comes back and just crushes Satan. Like, what a victory that we have to look forward to because of that. And until then, even though we got Satan over here as that accuser in our ear telling us we're not good enough and God doesn't love us and God can't forgive us for this or that and we're weak and we're whatever, we've got the advocate standing before the throne of God saying, he's with me, she's with me, they're forgiven, I died for him or I died for her. That's what the advocate is doing. Meanwhile, the accuser's over here just running his mouth. The advocate took some action and actually made things right for us. And I pull that out of this story again of just, man, what a headline to take away from this. The accuser just is no match at all for the advocate.
There's another thing that's not said that speaks volumes, which is after the second attack, when Job stays faithful after all of that, Satan just disappears.
Satan doesn't come back for round 3.
Slinks away.
Yeah. Love that. Love that. What else? What else kind of stands out from the story? Those are kind of the 4 headlines I'm pulling away. Oh. Yeah. 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 It kind of makes you really want a little old church lady to pray for a hedge of protection around you. Cliff.
What is that verse? Believe in him, keep his name, trust his word,
It's resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Is that James? You know my table of contents is broken, Cliff, so I don't even know why you asked me this question. Is it James? I was close. Yeah. Oh, I did. That's right. Yeah. It is just resist the devil and he will flee from you. Is that the whole verse or is there more to it? That's the whole verse. Is that what you're thinking of? It was a little simpler version than what you... Yeah. 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 Hmm. So to connect what you just said and what Mike was saying earlier, Satan didn't come back a third time. So Job resisted the devil, and what did the devil do? He fled. He fled. I don't know what the right word is. He fleeted.
But I think it's a part of will. It's part of will. Job willed to serve God, to worship God.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it wasn't because God was, making it so that he could do that. Job was doing it by his free will.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that point, Will.
He didn't want to do that in the first place because he rebelled against God.
Yep. Job was not God's puppet. God's not up here puppeteering Job. Job was an upright man on his own. Like, he was choosing to live a life that way. And we see that a clear example of that was when he chose to make those sacrifices for his children. He's like, he doesn't have the Bible, so he doesn't know the verse in Joshua that says, "As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." But we see him living a faith like that already. Yeah, I love that.
Job chose to worship God.
Yeah,
Job humbled himself before God. He chose to do
yeah,
that. Satan, he was not willing to humble himself
yep,
before God because he was attached. He thought himself to be better. This is why he was cast out.
that's why he got kicked. He got the boot. Yeah. Spiritual warfare. It is a real thing. Yeah. Next week, we will not have class because it's 4th of July weekend and I'm traveling. Hope you all have fun. But we'll come back then the next week. I don't know the date, the Sunday after. And we'll finish up this series. We will look at when Satan talks to Christ himself during the temptation in the wilderness. It's the third and final time that we see Satan with a speaking part in the Bible. So we'll look at that in 2 weeks. Next week, don't show up. Have a fun, safe, happy 4th of July. Yeah, come to church. Yeah, just don't come up here at 9:30. Yeah, just come sit and have some prayer time. It'd be good. Can somebody close us out in prayer, please?